if you ever see a case of leprosy, call me up, because it's going to be an import case, because we don't have leprosy here in the United States unless a person immigrates to this country from a place where leprosy is endemic. The same with elephantiasis.
And it was all in his face.
Yeah, and sometimes that's also a different condition as well.
Yeah.
You know, the guy, the famous elephant man of history, actually didn't have elephantiasis. A tumor in the face and stuff like that.
Okay.
So if the channels get blocked by this little worm, it's a problem. Now it can be cured with antibiotics, but the swollen legs and stuff like that's not going to go away. So it's a serious disease. It's certainly disfiguring and can certainly limit your mobility and ability to contribute to society, but that's what it would look like now.
So even after they cure it, the legs or whatever was swollen, they don't have any way to drain it?
Well, eventually the drainage will, it's like opening a clogged drain. Eventually you would probably get the fluid flowing back to where it's supposed to, but the tissue is going to be very distended and saggy and loose and things like that. So it's never going to be perfect, that's for sure. So anyway, so that's one example of what happens when the system gets clogged up and the plumbing really gets clogged up. Now, lymphocytes are types of white blood cells. I need to say a word about this, and I'm not going to say very much about it. But lymphocytes are a type of white blood cell. There's one on the microscope over there. They're very tiny little cells, about the size of a red blood cell. But the lymphocytes are the second most common type of white blood cell for good reason, because they're important in infection fighting. Lymphocytes are put into two different categories. There are lymphocytes which are called B cells and lymphocytes which are called T cells. They have different functions in the immune system. B cells are involved in the production of antibodies, which are very, very important, of course. T cells are involved in another type of immunity called cell-mediated immunity. When you take micro, from whoever you take it from, you'll learn a lot more about that. And there's a whole three-ring circus of various types of T cells in the human body. The most important, and the one I spent time talking about in my group, is this one called the T helper cell, because it is a critically important cell in our immune system to link both sides of our immune system together, the humoral antibody side and the cell-mediated side. And the T helper cells, as I'm sure you know from your just general knowledge and reading, the T helper cell is the cell of the immune system, or it's the preferred target cell of the HIV virus. And when the AIDS virus, the HIV virus, which causes a condition called AIDS, destroys the helper cells, the immune system fails, and then typically death can result. Although we're much better at managing that disease these days. But there's various kinds of T cells. T cells are also the cells that go after transplanted organs and things like that. So they're very, very important in immune functioning. As a matter of fact, if you are born, there is a condition, it's a rare condition in humans, where children are born without functional T cells or B cells. It's called, well, its common name is bubble boy syndrome. It's more proper name is severe combined immunodeficiency. But these kids are born without an immune system, so they don't live very long. They used to not live very long. Nowadays we know how to treat it. It's an enzyme deficiency and can be administered for life. I mean, the kids are going to have to continue to take it, but they do have a functional immune system. So without an immune system, you're pretty much out of luck. I mean, not pretty much out of luck. You're out of luck. Right? So you need an immune system. That's for sure. Oh, not speaking about the immune system, but I watched it wasn't that good of a movie. I watched this movie this weekend. It's about science. And when a scientist watches a movie about science, it's like, yeah, okay. Anyway, it was called Extraordinary Measures. And it was Harrison Ford, maybe it was Brendan Fraser. Anyway, and it was true. It was more or less a true story. And it's about this guy whose kids have something called Pompei's disease, which I had no idea what the hell it was. Never heard of it. And it's a genetic disease of glycogen storage, which is a sugar. And it causes a form of muscular dystrophy. And the whole plot of this movie, which was sort of the true part, was the race to save this family's kids, and other kids as well. And what they had to do is they had to isolate the gene, they had to clone the gene, they had to make the product, administer the product, and they all did this very quickly, of course, in the movie. It would take a long time to do it, realistically. But it's actually true. They actually did develop this therapy for it, and the kids had to get this enzyme that they're missing for life, but they don't die of this terrible muscular dystrophy condition. And when I was reading about it afterwards, because I needed to know something about it, just because I thought it sounded interesting, it said most kids with it don't live past the age of 9. So it's a kind of interesting show. But anyway, the science was a little weird. But all right, so origins of T cells and B cells. They both originate in the red bone marrow. B cells are called B cells because they come from the bone marrow. T cells are called T cells because they come from the bone marrow. That makes no sense. Why aren't they called, like, I don't know, some other kind of B cell? The reason they're called T cells is after the cells originate in the bone marrow, they migrate to the thymus gland, where they undergo some further processing and maturation. So that's why they're called T cells, because they kind of get their further processing in the thymus gland. And then they migrate out to our lymphatic organs, where they help mitigate the primary immune response. So very important. Without an immune system, you're done. All right. Now, lastly, here the various lymphoid tissues and organs, the tonsils, the lymph nodes, and very importantly, of course, the spleen. You've seen in your cats how big the spleen is. It's quite an impressively large organ. Thymus gland, of course, as well. First of all, the tonsils. We talked about these last night. There's 5 of them. These are lymphatic nodules, which are found in the pharynx, more or less. And they inspect pathogens in the food and air and things like that. And there's 5 tonsils. There's a single pharyngeal tonsil, the adenoids, which is located up by the opening of the auditory tube, which goes, as you remember, into the middle ear. A pair of palatine tonsils, which are right at the back. And lingual tonsils, which are under the tongue. Lingual tonsils, nobody ever does anything with those because they're under the tongue and they never get taken out. But the adenoids and pharyngeal tonsil and the palatine tonsil, yeah, those are the ones which tend to get inflamed. Here's a picture where they are. There's the pharyngeal tonsil, there's the lingual tonsil, and here's the palatine tonsils, the ones in the back. We don't do histology, so don't worry about that. Yeah, sorry.
Just like that, maybe for like 10 seconds.
What's wrong? Sorry. Hang on, I'll get it back. I don't know. Yeah, you can do it. There we go. There we go. I showed a slide this morning in micro of a condition called thrush, which is a fungal infection of the throat. Anyway, this picture's, at the back of, a terrible draw, but I try to draw it. So, at the back of the throat, there's this little thing that hangs down, and, the tonsils are back here. There's this little thing that hangs down right in here, and it's called the uvula. Mm-hmm. And so one semester somebody asked me what it's for, and I'm going, geez, I'm not exactly sure, but it has something to do with speech, right? And, and it can be a problem, and, sometimes it has to be removed or shaved or something like that if people have trouble with apnea, sleep apnea, things like that. So this is fun. So I was talking about one night, this lady sat right here, and she says to me, she goes, oh yeah, she's the guy that runs the tattoo parlor I go to. And, she had something, but whatever. And I go, what about it? She goes, he has his uvula pierced. And I looked at her and I said, no. She goes, yeah, I swear. I said, well, how do you know? She goes, well, what did you show me? So I'm going, no way. You get the thing in the back of your throat like with a piercing? She goes, yeah. So, of course, I had to search for it, and we found it. And it was kind of disturbing. Going, wow, that's weird, because you'd have to walk around all day long with your mouth open. And I'm thinking, well, what happens like spaghetti gets caught on it? So I can think of weird things. Anyway, so it is possible to pierce your uvula, which is